Rude teens laugh at quiet janitor, not knowing he's a retired Special Forces soldier. They mocked him. They shoved him. They humiliated him in front of everyone. But what they didn't know was that he wasn't the kind of kid you could push around. Not for long. The bus ride to Lincoln Heights High School, Missouri was long and quiet. Dorian Johnson, 15 years old, leaned his head against the cold glass window. Outside, the scenery kept shifting, from busy downtown blocks to quiet suburbs, where every house looked like a copy of the last. His mom had taken a better job in this town. His uncle had told him, think of it as a fresh start. But Dorian knew better. Fresh starts didn't exist for kids like him. Not when you looked the way he did. Not in a place like this. When the bus finally screeched to a stop in front of the school, Dorian could already feel it. The pause in conversations when he stepped down. The sideways glances. The silence that followed him like a shadow. He'd been here before. Different schools. Different towns. Same story. Inside the building, the hallways smelled of floor polish and cafeteria food. Locker doors slammed. Laughter bounced off the walls. Students moved in groups, tight circles that had no room for him. Teachers greeted him with smiles, but they were too careful, too polite. Their voices pitched just a little higher, like they were trying not to slip. He answered when called on. Sat where he was told, kept his focus on the work. But the stares didn't stop. By lunch, it felt like an itch beneath his skin. Dorian stood with a plastic tray in his hands, scanning the cafeteria for somewhere to sit. Most tables were full. Every group locked in conversations that didn't include him. Finally, he spotted a seat next to a kid scrolling on his phone. It wasn't ideal, but it would do. He set his tray down. Just as his fork touched the food, a voice cut through the noise. You lost. Dorian turned his head. A blonde kid with too much confidence lounged in his chair. Behind him, two more guys smirked, waiting. Dorian let out a slow breath. Didn't know I needed a map. The blonde kid chuckled, shaking his head. Just making sure. Not a lot of new faces around here. Dorian caught it, the hesitation. The part of the sentence left unsaid. He met the boy's stare, face unreadable. Guess I'm the exception. The smirk widened. But the look in the boy's eyes. That wasn't just amusement. It was something else. Welcome to Ridgemont, the blonde kid said. Dorian said nothing. He just kept eating. But he knew. This was just the beginning. First it was just words. Side comments in the hall. Whispers meant for him to hear. Didn't know they let guys like him in here. Wonder how long he'll last. Nothing new. He'd heard it all before. So he ignored it. But there was one kid who didn't let it go. Bryce Tanner. Quarterback. Golden boy of Ridgemont High. Son of the guy who owned half the car dealerships in town. Rich, popular, untouchable. And for some reason, Dorian's very existence bothered him. The first bump happened at Dorian's locker. Books in his hands when suddenly, bang, a shoulder slammed into him, hard enough to rattle the locker door. Oops. Bryce's voice was dripping with fake innocence. Didn't see you there. Laughter followed. Dorian shut his locker calmly, gripping his notebook a little tighter. No reaction. No anger. Just silence. Bryce smirked. You're quiet, huh? That's cool. Real cool. For a moment their eyes locked. Dorian's stare didn't flinch. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was just steady. And for the first time, Bryce's smirk flickered. The second time was in the cafeteria. Dorian was on his way to dump his tray when suddenly, foot shot out. Not subtle. Not even close. His body jolted forward, but he caught himself before he hit the ground. Laughter erupted. Bryce leaned back, hands raised like he was innocent. "Relax, man. It was a joke." Dorian didn't respond. Didn't look at him. He just stepped over Bryce's foot and kept walking. More laughter. Someone muttered, "Too easy." Dorian clenched his jaw. His uncle's words echoing in his head. A lion doesn't flinch when the hyenas bark. So he let it go. But Bryce wasn't finished. The hallways had emptied out. Lockers slammed shut. Feet shuffled out the double doors. Ridgemont High was winding down. But not for Dorian. He had stayed back in the library, finishing an assignment. By the time he stepped outside, the parking lot was half empty. The late afternoon sun stretched shadows across the pavement. That's when he heard it. Voices. Too familiar. "Hey, new guy." Dorian barely turned before something hit him hard in the back. His body jolted forward, stumbling. Cold liquid splattered across his hoodie. The smell of soda clung to his skin. Laughter. Always laughter. He turned slowly. Bryce Tanner. Cup in hand. His buddies, Nick, Kyle, and two more whose names didn't matter, standing close. Bryce tilted the empty cup. A few drops still falling. "Damn. My bad. Didn't see you there." The words were mocking. Not even an attempt to hide it this time. Dorian looked down. Ice cubes scattered at his feet. Sticky soda clung to his hoodie. For a moment, silence. Other students, still lingering in the lot, had stopped to watch. Bryce smirked, taking a step closer. "Come on, man. Say something." Dorian didn't. He just started walking past him. That's when Bryce shoved him. Not playful. Not subtle. Forceful. Deliberate. The crowd gasped. Dorian staggered back a step, catching himself. His hands flexed at his sides. Bryce laughed. "What's wrong? You scared?" Nick grinned. "Nah, he's just soft." The words cut deeper than the shove. All his life, Dorian had heard the same voice in his head. His uncle's voice. "Keep your hands in your pockets. Don't give them what they want. Walk away." He had lived by those words. Walk away. They come. Control yourself. But this time was different. Bryce wasn't looking for a joke. He wasn't looking for laughs. He was looking to prove something. And Dorian had nothing left to prove, except who he really was. Slowly, Dorian set his backpack down. The movement was calm, controlled. Bryce raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you got something to say now?" No words. Just a look. Steady, unblinking stare. Bryce chuckled, shaking his head. "Man, you." That's all he got out. Dorian stepped in. Quick. Precise. A faint jab, left hand. Enough to make Bryce flinch. And then the real shot. Right hook. Clean. Sharp. Straight to the ribs. The sound was sickening. Bryce's breath left his body in a choked gasp. His body folded over. But Dorian wasn't finished. He pivoted. An uppercut. Perfect form. Bryce's head snapped back. His legs gave out. And the golden boy of Ridgemont High collapsed onto the pavement. Silence. Complete silence. The laughter was gone. Mouths hung open. Nick and Kyle froze, unsure of what to do. Dorian stepped back. Breathing steady. He adjusted his hoodie like nothing had happened. Bryce groaned on the ground, rolling onto his side. Puffing. Defeated. Finally Dorian spoke. "You done?" No answer. Just more coughing. His eyes moved to the others. Anyone else? No one moved. Not a word. Dorian picked up his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked away. No victory shout. No arrogance. Just silence. But everyone who saw it knew. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The next morning, Ridgemont High wasn't the same. The hallways buzzed differently. Whispers carried through every corner. Did you hear what happened? Bryce got dropped. No way. Tanner. By the new kid. I saw it with my own eyes. Everywhere Dorian walked, eyes followed. Some curious, some shocked, some impressed. The invisible wall that once kept him isolated was gone. Now he wasn't invisible at all. At lunch, the cafeteria had its usual noise. Trays clattered. Voices overlapped. But the moment Dorian walked in, silence hit. Tables turned. Heads swiveled. He grabbed a tray like nothing was different. But everything was. A group of kids nodded at him respectfully. Few even moved over, making space. No one had ever done that before. For the first time since moving here, Dorian wasn't sitting alone. But respect is a double-edged sword. 2 tables away, Bryce sat. Bruised jaw. Bandage on his cheek. Humiliation burned in his eyes. His friends tried to cheer him up, but he barely touched his food. Every laugh in the cafeteria felt like it was aimed at him. Every glance felt like a dagger. Nick leaned in. Man, you gonna let him get away with that? Bryce clenched his fist. His pride had been ripped from him in front of everyone. And pride is something Bryce Tanner never let go of. Later that day, Dorian was called into Mr. Harris's office. His history teacher. The older man leaned back in his chair, studying him carefully. I heard about yesterday. Dorian stayed quiet. Mr. Harris sighed. I don't condone fighting, but I know bullies when I see them. Just be careful, son. People like Bryce. They don't forget. Dorian nodded once. No excuses. No explanations. That night, Dorian stood in front of the bathroom mirror. He looked at his hands. Steady. Strong. The same hands his uncle once trained. Memories flashed. Sweat-drenched boxing gloves. Shouts of keep your guard up. And the warning. Your fists are gifts, Dorian. But gifts can destroy if you don't control them. For the first time he wondered. Had he crossed a line? Or had he simply shown who he really was? Meanwhile, across town, Bryce sat in his room, replaying the fight in his head. Over and over. Every punch. Every laugh from the crowd. Humiliation twisted into rage. He pulled out his phone. Sent a message to someone outside school. Friend. Cousin. Someone meaner, tougher, and older. The words were simple. Need backup. This isn't over. And with that message, the storm was set in motion. Dorian didn't know it yet. But the fight at the parking lot was only round 1. The real battle was still coming. The days after the fight stretched heavy. Ridgemont High had changed. Dorian couldn't walk through a hallway without whispers following him. Some called him a hero. Some called him dangerous. Either way, he had become somebody. But with attention came pressure. Teachers watched him closer. Principals whispered about troublemakers. Even students who cheered for him kept their distance. Respect, fear, isolation all over again. That night at home, the tension carried over. Dorian sat at the kitchen table. Hoodie still damp from the rain. His mother, tired from a double shift, placed a plate of food in front of him. You've been quiet, she said softly. He shrugged. Just school. But she had heard. Parents always hear. Don't let them drag you into something you can't walk away from. He looked at her, guilt pressing down. They started it. She sighed. I know. But baby, the world doesn't care who started it. They only care about what you do. Her words cut deep. He had no answer. The locker room warning. The next day, in the locker room after gym, Dorian was tying his sneakers when a voice spoke behind him. Word is, Bryce ain't done. He turned. It was Marcus. One of the football players, a guy who usually kept to himself. Dorian narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Marcus glanced around, lowered his voice. He's been talking to people outside school. Real people. The kind who don't play games. Dorian tied his laces tighter. He didn't need to ask who. He already knew. Trouble was coming. Across town, Bryce sat in the back of his cousin Ethan's car. Ethan was older, 20 maybe 21. Rough around the edges. Knuckles scarred from fights. Eyes that didn't blink much. You sure this kid's worth my time? Ethan asked. Bryce's jaw clenched. He embarrassed me. In front of the whole school. I want him broken. Ethan smirked. You want him scared? Or you want him bleeding? Bryce's silence was the answer. That evening, Dorian walked home under gray skies. The wind carried the smell of rain. His headphones dangled silent around his neck. He couldn't focus on music. Every shadow on the sidewalk felt longer. Every laugh behind him felt sharper. Something was coming. He could feel it. When he reached his house, his uncle was there. Visiting, sitting on the porch with folded arms. The old man looked at him, studying his posture, the heaviness in his steps. You've been fighting, haven't you? Dorian froze. Didn't answer. His uncle's voice was gravel. Boy, I told you. Your fists are a weapon. Once you use them, you can't take it back. Finally, Dorian whispered. They left me no choice. The old man leaned forward, eyes hard. There's always a choice. And you better choose right, because the wrong choice, it'll follow you forever. Later that night, Bryce sent one last message. Tomorrow. Behind the gym. After last bell. Ethan and two of his friends would be there. Not students. Not kids. And when the message spread through Ridgemont High, everyone knew. Tomorrow wasn't going to be just another school day. It was going to be a war. By the next morning, Ridgemont High wasn't just buzzing. It was electric. Everyone knew. The whispers were louder than the morning bell. After school. Behind the gym. Bryce is bringing people. Not just kids, outsiders. Phones buzzed. Snapchat sent. TikTok's ready. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was an event. The final bell rang. Students poured out of classrooms, but they weren't heading home. They moved like a tide, all in one direction. Behind the gym. The sun hung low, painting the sky orange and red. A storm was brewing inside that golden light. Dorian walked slowly, his backpack heavy on his shoulder. Every step echoed. Every heartbeat pounded louder. Behind the gym, the crowd had already gathered. Dozens of students circled around, phones out, voices low with anticipation. At the center stood Bryce. But he wasn't alone. Next to him was Ethan, taller, broader, tattoos creeping up his arms. And behind him two more guys. Rough, older. Faces hardened by too many fights. The crowd parted when Dorian arrived. Silence swallowed the whispers. Bryce smirked, though the bruise on his jaw still pulsed dark purple. Well, look who showed up. Thought you'd run home to mommy. Dorian dropped his bag calmly. No words, just steady eyes. Ethan stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. This the kid who dropped you? He asked Bryce with a grin. Bryce nodded. Break him. The crowd gasped as Ethan lunged forward. Yes, heavy. Dorian sidestepped. Quick. Controlled. His uncle's training flashing through his body like muscle memory. Ethan swung again. A wild right hook. Dorian ducked low. Countered with a body shot. But the air left Ethan's lungs for a second. But he grinned through it. You got hands, boy. Let's see how long they last. Before Dorian could react, the second cousin grabbed him from behind. Arms locked around his chest, crushing. The crowd roared. Phones shook in trembling hands. Dorian gritted his teeth. Elbows drove back hard, once, twice, until the grip loosened. He twisted free, slamming his shoulder into the man's jaw. The man stumbled. Ethan came charging again, this time fists flying like hammers. Dorian blocked one, dodged another, but the third clipped his cheek, a flash of white pain. Blood filled his mouth. The crowd gasped louder. The fight wasn't one-sided anymore. Bryce shouted from the edge, "Finish him!" And something inside Dorian snapped. He wasn't just defending anymore. He was unleashing. He weaved under Ethan's arm. Left jab, right cross, uppercut. Ethan staggered, eyes wide, stumbling back into the circle of students. The crowd erupted. The second cousin rushed again. Dorian turned, low kick to the knee. The man collapsed with a grunt. It wasn't just a fight. It was survival. Now only Bryce remained standing. His golden boy smile was gone. Fear flickered behind his eyes. The crowd hushed again. Phone steady. No one breathing. Bryce clenched his fists, but his voice shook. "You think this is over? You think you're tough?" Dorian stepped closer. Blood dripping from his lip. Breath heavy. "You steady." "I don't think I'm tough," he said, voice low and sharp. "I just don't back down." Bryce swung wildly, desperation in his movement. Dorian slipped past it. One clean shot straight to the jaw. Bryce's body hit the ground, flat. Silence. Then chaos. The crowd screamed. Some cheered. Some panicked. But everyone knew. The golden boy of Ridgemont was finished. And the new kid, the one they mocked, laughed at, humiliated, had become a legend. The crowd scattered like birds after thunder. Some students ran. Some stayed, whispering, recording, replaying. Bryce lay unconscious, groaning as Ethan and the others pulled him up. His pride was broken, his crown shattered. Dorian stood still, breathing heavy. Blood on his hoodie, knuckles burning. But inside he felt nothing but a strange, hollow quiet. Because fights end fast. But consequences, they linger. Next morning, Dorian barely made it through first period before the announcement came. "Dorian Carter, report to the principal's office." The entire class turned, eyes locked on him. Some curious, some impressed, some waiting for him to fall. He walked the hallway slowly, backpack slung over one shoulder. It felt heavier than ever. Principal Avery's office smelled of old books and coffee. The blinds were shut tight. Folder lay open on the desk. Beside her sat Coach Harrison, arms crossed. "Sit down, Dorian." He did. Back straight. Eyes forward. Principal Avery's voice was calm but sharp. "I don't need to tell you why you're here. What happened yesterday has put this entire school under a spotlight. Parents are calling. The school board is asking questions. Videos of the fight are all over social media." Dorian stayed silent. She leaned forward. "You're a new student. I wanted to give you a chance here. But fighting against multiple students, that's not something I can ignore. Suspension is on the table." Dorian's jaw tightened. He wanted to speak, but the words tangled in his throat. Coach Harrison cleared his throat. "With respect, Principal Avery." The boy defended himself. Bryce and his crew cornered him. He didn't start it. Avery's eyes narrowed. "That doesn't change the fact that 3 students were injured." She turned back to Dorian. "You're talented, no doubt. But you're walking a very fine line. One more incident like this, and you won't just be suspended. You'll be expelled." Her words landed heavy like bricks stacked on his chest. The day dragged. Whispers followed him everywhere. Some clapped his shoulder, calling him a legend. Others sneered, muttering thug under their breath. Every voice pressed against his skull until the final bell set him free. On the walk home, the streets felt too quiet. The houses too neat. The sky too wide. His fists throbbed with every step. But what hurt more was the thought repeating in his mind. Maybe they'll never see me for who I really am. His mom was waiting. Not smiling. Not angry. Just tired. "Sit," she said softly. He did. On the table lay her phone, the fight video frozen mid-frame. Dorian's fist connecting with Bryce's jaw. The moment the entire town had seen. His mother's voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? They're already calling me. The school. Parents. People at work whispering behind my back. Is this what you wanted?" Dorian's throat ached. "No, Mum. I didn't." She cut him off. "I told you every time we moved you had to stay out of trouble. Keep your head down. Be better than them. And now we're right back where we started." Silent.